Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest-running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasevich.
Welcome, everyone, to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. This is episode 328 with myself, my co-host, Sarah Monroe, and an amazing guest that I know I've actually known for quite a number of years. So we're going to be excited to have him join us. We're going to be talking all about Twitter flocks this morning, along with a lot of other really great social media news. But with that, I'm going to go and bring on my co-host, Sarah Monroe. And just a quick note, we are streaming this over on Twitter Spaces as well. So at Social Chefs over on Twitter Spaces, if you want to, if you're driving along, you can listen to the audio, or you can check us out. We're broadcasting on YouTube and Facebook, and I think on LinkedIn and whatnot. So Sarah, it's great seeing you. How you doing?
Great to see you too. I'm great. And yes, today is all about Twitter. So it's terrific that we're on Twitter Spaces, which we are every week that we can get the Wi-Fi to work, right?
Yeah.
Spaces. So we're going to talk about community and more importantly, business strategies around communities with our friend Mike Gingerich, who is really all about web marketing strategies. He's a big business blogger who likes to break down all of these big concepts into simple steps that people can really implement well. And he's also all about living and working with purpose. And we should also mention that he is co-host of Magnet Marketing with Jessica Phillips too. Yeah. So let's welcome in our guest, Mike.
Mike, how you doing? It's good to have you back.
Hey.
Actually.
Yes, good to be here. It's been a little while, and I know the show has always been thriving and moving along. Like longest running, right? I mean, so it's amazing.
I was still glad taking a week off.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's been good. It's good to have you back, man. So
good.
Very cool. So, Sarah, I'm gonna. Well, Mike, actually, did she cover everything about you? Is there anything you want to add?
No, she did a pretty good job. So, when I say living a life with purpose, I always say there's two things about that. You can, in any situation, you can always, how can you seek to add value? Mm-hmm. And from a life perspective and even a marketing perspective there, the way you set yourself apart is to be uncommon. So those are the two kind of taglines I like to roll with. And, so hopefully we can add some value today.
Fantastic. So Sarah, I'm going to turn things over to you and let you kick things off.
Sure. We are going to start with some Twitter news, and Twitter has been building out its communities within the app. So they actually launched something called Communities in September. We are going to talk about that in just a second. But the big news is what they are calling flocks. And I have to say, I love just this theme. I love it when any kind of brand, whether it's a small marketing agency, it's a retailer, it's a product, or it's someone like Twitter, who has these little themes, right? Twitter likes to have the bird theme to it. So they're calling this flocks. And the phrase that they're using is variable audience controls. So what does that mean? It means that you're going to be able to create a flock of up to 150 people / accounts, right? And they are the only ones who get to see those tweets and respond to those tweets. Now, of course, internet, anybody can screenshot anything. So what you think might be private may not be private in the end. But this is a way to build a small group within the Twitter sphere. So you'll be able to add people, share content privately, remove people at any time, and they don't have a notification. So they don't know if they fall out of your flock kind of thing. So, and they're also giving the option, it was Alessandro Pelosi who first saw this, where you can select as you're posting to Twitter, you can select if it goes out to everybody, or you can choose that flock option too. Very similar to when you're posting on Facebook. If you are like me and you post to different groups at different times on Facebook, I have very segmented audiences among my friends list on Facebook. This is sort of that similar thing. It looks like right now you only get one flock, right? You only get to put the birds in one place. So this is really a build out, like I said before, it's a build out of communities. Communities is a moderated piece of Twitter. Everything can be publicly visible on Twitter in communities and searchable. With flocks, it's not. It is a private space. So think of it like a private Facebook group. And it's really a way to partition down that big fire hose of Twitter into this smaller piece. And while we're talking about this, I'm just going to jump into communities too, because I think it makes sense for us to talk about these two pieces together. So communities were launched in September for iOS. This week, they are now rolling out to Android users in select countries, right? So communities is really topic-based. And they are either invite only or they're open to be part of this moderated community. So there are moderators that are part of this. And like I said, most things are publicly available. There may be a request to join, but right now there isn't. And there's some inkling that this may fall behind a paywall, which is a great topic for us to talk about too, is whether or not flocks might be behind a paywall, might be just for your super thanks or your Twitter Blue subscribers or your ticketed spaces. So both of these pieces are kind of intertwined as far as the news goes. So Twitter flocks and Twitter communities, what do you guys think? Basically, like Facebook groups, back in the day, the LinkedIn groups for Twitter.
I gotta say, from a Flocks perspective, I like I hope they stick with the name Twitter Flock, because I like the concept of that. I think they're trying to call it like maybe Twitter Trusted Friends, but I think that I prefer the Flock idea, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. I also think it makes a lot of sense to start with one, as you mentioned, because what's the biggest challenge that a lot of people have? It's getting that momentum, getting going. Like Mike, I know you run marathons and triathlons and whatnot, right? And like, that you're not going to go out and all of a sudden run, 13.2, 26.1. Like you're not going to go out and run all of that, right? Or sorry, 13.1. Right. Yeah. You're not going to go run like, a half marathon or a marathon at once. You're going to work up, and maybe, if you've never run before, you're not going to run, the whole half marathon. You might try, but you're going to be really sore and whatnot. But, so you're going to work your way up. And I like the idea that Twitter is potentially rolling out Flock to only let you have one, so you can get accustomed to doing it, because it is going to be, it's a muscle. You got to build it up. So.
No, I think that is you're right on. I think that if they had opened it up, I mean, somebody could easily, get overwhelmed with that. Now, there are a few people out there that are very active Twitter users with large followings who I could see, wanting more than one flock for a little bit of different topics, things like that. But I think that's a positive way to start. I think that, Sarah, you kind of mentioned at the beginning there, just a, Facebook group-esque kind of thing. And Christian, you also mentioned, definitely a better name than trusted follower, something like that. So it gives that sense of community, a flock, I think of a flock of geese, and they're heading in the same direction. They've they're flowing. And so I mean, Twitter is rolling out some innovations. I mean, they throw a lot against the wall and see if something sticks, but I think maybe we got something here in this one that is a helpful kind of breakdown. And now, Sarah, you also mentioned the paywall, Twitter Blue, those kind of things. So it's hard to say, what they're doing with all these different pieces and how those kind of weave together. Where they're going to draw that line on these pieces. It seems like they're going to, maybe there will be both options. I guess you have to be invited to a flock. So it's not like something, who knows, maybe there'll be a option to request to join, those types of pieces. But it is a nice subgroup, because that's probably been one of the problems of Twitter. You get 11,000 followers, whatever, and you get just some kind of these random conversations, and some of the better conversations happen when you're drilling down a little bit and so Flock seems to give that kind of opportunity.
And
Definitely an exclusivity piece too, right?
Yes.
The invite to join will likely be on the community piece. I think they're going to have to figure out, are we going to have flocks? Are we going to have communities? What is it going to be, so that it's a little easier for people to figure all of this out?
And I want to add one other thing actually. So that, you're talking about like, inviting to join things and whatnot. The other thing that Flock reminds me of is if somebody wants to send like a WhatsApp message to people. So so here's the thing. They do something on, YouTube or their social channels or LinkedIn or wherever. It doesn't matter what social media platform. And then they go and they're like, hey, you know what? I have a group of people that I built up on WhatsApp that I want to send this to. And that also reminds me of what Flock could potentially be, but it's keeping people on Twitter. And the fact that like, it also is encouraging a lot more private social media conversations, even though we know those are already kind of happening now, like we communicate over Facebook Messenger versus everything being public. Right. I think I think Twitter, and Sarah, you and I were talking about this earlier. And I said, I think what Twitter has done is they basically are now building a Facebook clone. That's actually what I think is going to happen here.
Yeah.
And and here's the reason why, because Twitter for the most part is public. You can always see it. You can go to the web, you can see everything that's going on. Right. And then like, yeah, you got the DM side, but like big deal about that. Right. So all the tweets are public. Now what they're doing is it looks like they're adding a layer in to be able to add some of that privatization that has existed on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so it's still keeping their platform open, but also privatizing part of it, versus Facebook is pretty much all private, right? You have to have a Facebook account to log in and whatnot, and to see anything pretty much. And so I think they're building that. And then I think what they are going to also do is I think they are going to introduce they already have Twitter Blue. I think the next move is every social media platform is going to be a subscription service, I think, because they're realizing you can't just keep running ads, right, Mike? Like you can't just keep running ads. Everybody gets tired of ads. And so I think you're going to move to that at some point, but that's my take.
Okay. So. That's a big statement there. It's a big statement. I'll move into
I realize it is.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about this in the Q&A a little bit later too. But when I've been reading a lot about mental health and social media, and it was the U.S. Surgeon General who said a few weeks ago on a podcast I was listening to, he said, when people are just scrolling mindlessly through social media, yes, they're looking for a few pieces of news, but they get that in the first couple of headlines that they read or first couple of stories. But that doom scrolling, people are doing that because they're looking for connection. And I see Twitter flocks as a way to make those connections in Twitter, which we really haven't been able to do. Yes, you can respond and you can comment and you can retweet and all that kind of stuff, but there hasn't been that inclusive connection part to Twitter yet. And that's what I like about this. Yeah, we can have lists and stuff, but it's not quite the same. It's not being part of that community where you can have the conversation. And I can see this being really helpful with groups that are working in activism. Twitter is really responsible for the Arab Spring, for a lot of social movements around the world. I know that there's a lot of people in the Black Lives Matter movement that attribute Twitter to really raising up the presence of different rallies and things, especially the Ferguson rallies that were happening. How many years ago was that? But really, Twitter can be that megaphone for messaging. And then because there's so many reporters on Twitter as well, that can actually help advance a cause too. So I can see flocks working really well with niche groups. Also, I know Twitter and medicine. There's Twitter medicine groups, not groups, but sort of a part of Twitter that's very focused on different experiences, different backgrounds, people who want to come together. So I think Flocks is going to be a great aspect for that.
Definitely. And we don't have any information in terms of when they're going to actually, like, some users have this, but we don't know if they're going to roll it out to like everyone. Right. Again, it rolls out in stages, but I think the key thing is that, if I'm a business, how can I start to prepare for something like this? You got any tips before we move to the next topic?
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely think that, now is a time to be preparing for that. If Twitter's a spot where you need to be, where your audience is, and where you want to connect with people. And I think that, if you're gonna only be able to have one, so that's going to force you now to begin thinking about, okay, what do I want to center that around? What's central? What's to my business, to my community? What's a value add that I want to provide that for this smaller group versus the bigger group. So I think it's time to start asking some of those questions to prepare yourself. If you're only going to be able to have one, you have to kind of know what the purpose of that one is going to be.
Good point. Right. And I would say you really have to earn it. I've been saying this for years. Your social media content needs to be relevant, needs to be useful, needs to be responsive, right? And what we're seeing with all of the platforms, with Facebook now, you can adjust your newsfeed to your recent and favorites, right? Instagram is likely is testing out this 3-part feed where you can have just the algorithm, you can have favorites, you can have, can't remember what they called it. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but you're going to have these segmented newsfeed pieces. And so you want to be part of that favorite list, right? You want to be that go-to for information or entertainment, whatever it is that you're putting out there for your followers, for your audience, your people. You want them to say, I want this account to be top of my feed. And it looks like the flock content, possibly the community content, will also rise up to that Twitter feed too.
Definitely. Yeah. So again, Twitter flock, 150 people. You can have one flock at the moment. And again, it's something that they're testing. You may see the word, trusted friends being banted, being kind of just, tossed back and forth. But I think it's going to be a good feature. I mean, I think it's, again, making that push for social media to go more private than to have everything public. So very, very, very cool feature. I got to say, I like what Twitter's been doing lately. Like they've finally been starting with some really cool features, not just like spaces, but like everything across the board. Twitter Blue, Twitter Spaces, Twitter Flock. What else? Like
Super Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't it? Super Follows. Super Follows. Super Thanks is YouTube. Super Follows is Twitter.
Awesome.
Trying to keep it all straight. My goodness.
Tip jar, all those kind of things, man.
So,
no,
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And by the way, so Sarah, what's the next topic we want to talk about? Because I do have a good comment I want to bring up, but I think it kind of aligns with something. So
sure. So the next topic, staying with Twitter, Twitter is expanding their reporting of misinformation. So you're actually going to see when you report a tweet, you're going to be able to report. There's now a misleading line. It's 1, 2, 3, 4th line down there on that slide that we have to say that it's misleading. And it's another way to teach. It sounds like right now what this is going to do is, yes, report misinformation, but it's also going to teach the Twitter algorithm what you find misleading and what you find interesting, and sort of rank that content for your Twitter feed. The head of site integrity for Twitter actually says that only 10% of what's reported as misleading information on Twitter is actionable. So the other 90% is either the trolls or the bots just attacking and trying to take down information that could be legitimate, but they are the misinformation bots that are trying to take out or to promote their own misinformation. So we talked about this a few months ago, Christian, and I couldn't find the episode. We talked about Birdwatch. Twitter had launched something, I want to say late spring, early summer, that they called it Birdwatch. It's a separate site. So if you wanted to promote, if you wanted to report misinformation, you had to take the time to set up your presence on Birdwatch and then go there and do your reporting and commenting and letting them know what you found for misinformation and why. So you have to give more explanation to that. So, but this is going to be right in the drop down. I know when I report a tweet, when I look at the options, I'm thinking, It's none of these. It's really, it's false information or misleading information. So it's nice that they're bringing that in to the reporting.
We had talked about Birdwatch, back around January, actually, of last year.
A year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So it was my first show. I couldn't even find the notes.
Yeah,
So,
it's been a while. And but yeah, here's the thing. I got two things to say on, reporting, I guess. So one of those is everybody needs to do their part to report things, because that's the only way you're going to improve things. So if you do see, content that is misleading, report it, but also make sure that you're not going crazy on it and reporting things just because, and this can happen, for example, if you're with, you and a competitor, for example, and maybe you don't get along. And there are a lot of people that do this. They will go and report an account because it's their competitor and they want to like make it harder for their competitor in a way. That's not the right way to report things. So it's report things if it's actually, non-factual information. So very cool. Sarah, did you want to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. As we said in our New Year's show, right? I said, use social media for good, right? Let's do better, be better people, be better humans, make social media work for good, right? Yeah. And call out the misinformation, call out the bullying and the hate speech, be a good citizen, in person and online.
Definitely. So where do we go from here, by the way?
Let's go to Meta and all of the apps within the metaverse. So we're going to start with Meta. If no one's noticed, a lot of things have been changing over to Meta. I noticed that I now have different pop-ups that Facebook for Business is now Meta for Business, and they sort of have this little animation that rolls, so that lets you know that things are changing. So Meta Workplace is going to integrate WhatsApp into it. And what it looks like is kind of like a Slack channel or other project management software. Honestly, I haven't been part of Facebook Workplace, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it makes perfect sense that WhatsApp is brought in as a messaging tool, because it's far more, has far more bells and whistles than the features of Facebook Messenger. So really what they're hoping that WhatsApp will do is connect teams, on all levels. They're reporting in their announcement about this. They reported that 55% of workers feel disconnected from the management that they're working. And this is just getting worse with more remote workforces. And as a lot of offices are not going to open up, they're realizing it's been almost 2 years of working remotely. We can actually do this. Let's build in these efficiencies and use tools like this. So it really does look kind of like Slack. Kind of like Teams, kind of like all of those wonderful project management platforms.
I gotta say, and Mike, I'm interested in getting your thoughts on this. I mean, I like the idea of rolling WhatsApp into this. I think that, pretty much any of the Meta-owned properties now, I think they should all be part of, potentially be part of Facebook's, of Meta. Sorry, already mixing it up. Of Workplace. I think they all make a lot of sense to add in there because, again, I mean, it helps your like workforce stay like on top of things. But at the same time, the other thing I guess I look at with this is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how relevant Workplace is going to be, because if people are moving to like, more remote work, it still introduces BYOD, bring your own device and then put it under your work policies. And I don't think that, I think that people are capable of like doing all of that at the same time, and not spending all their time on one particular thing. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
I think that it fits that Meta has done this, just because I think that's been kind of the Zuckerberg's vision for a while, kind of announcing that, and maybe it was even 2 years ago now, just how they want to be, one with different features, but cross-platform integration, and you first saw that with Facebook and Instagram. So you saw all these integrations that way, Messenger with Facebook pages, all those types of pieces. And now totally makes sense, because I believe stats are still true that WhatsApp is probably the most used messaging app out there.
Yeah.
And so why not? I mean, that's another population that of significant users to try to bring in to try to get some more traction in workspace, workplace. So,
Mhm.
will it happen? I think maybe you got a good point there, Christian. That's this is their attempt. So we have to wait and kind of see of whether this helps the adoption rate of that, or if there's still that kind of barrier for workplace
Yeah.
that it's that Meta, the Facebook part of that is still seen as um, too personal versus work.
Right. Well, what Meta is saying, right now they have 7 million paid subs for Workplace, paid subscriptions for Workplace.
Okay.
And when you compare that to, say, Microsoft Teams, they can't really compete with something like that.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. I mean, it makes sense if they want a better, more robust messaging feature, that they use a product that they already have. Question is, because we're already hearing these things are happening in the EU about Facebook there are different panels that are saying that Facebook needs to be broken up, or Meta needs to be broken up. What is it going to be? The question that I have with WhatsApp, and as far as using it in the workplace, is that many countries use WhatsApp as their telephone. They don't have phone numbers. Their families don't connect any other way. They don't text. They use WhatsApp. And that family distraction within your Facebook work or your Meta workplace, how is that going to work out, right? I have one friend on WhatsApp. She just sends me the most hilarious. She's retired. She sends me the most hilarious things every day to make me laugh, right? And to think of her messages popping up, I'm just thinking if she was in a Slack channel with me, to see her messages popping up while I'm trying to do something a little more complicated and focused, I think would be a big distraction.
So hold on. So just remember, so workplace, the one thing with workplace would be, it is your work environment. So your personal stuff wouldn't go in there. So it would be like, for example, the organization would set it up and they would say, okay, we're going to have, like, if they want to roll out, news to somebody, for example, that's all directly in workplace. So, like, for example, for Facebook, it would be, if they wanted to, like, if they had company announcements they wanted to let go out to people, employees would be able to see it directly in Facebook Workplace. And then when you incorporate the WhatsApp piece, my guess is that would then incorporate, like, almost like adding, how can I put it? Almost like adding, like, access to a software for an employee. And so then, therefore, I wouldn't have to be on my phone. Like, for example, right now you can open up WhatsApp and it can be a mix of work and business and whatnot. But I think by having it in workplace, it's all work silo.
Work. Okay.
Yeah.
But not that far away.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and here's the thing. That's why I said
it's
kind of weird, because if I'm at, like, I only have one mobile device. A lot of people don't carry around multiple mobile devices. They don't have one for work and one for personal. They typically have one device that serves both purposes. And so that's why I brought up the question of, is workplace really needed? I love the idea they're moving more pieces into it, but I don't know if it's going to be relevant.
I'm going to go out on a limb.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not, and it's not going to take off, and it's just never going to gain traction or the strong user base. Just that's my take on workplace.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was
many other things that are too far ahead of it.
Yeah. It was an interesting evolution of Facebook groups into making it more of a workplace. But I agree that other things like Microsoft Teams, where you have the programs that you're working on anyway, and the file share, it's not going to go that far. Yeah. So, yeah.
Good point. Okay. So, we talked about Facebook Workplace. What's next?
Facebook Workplace. Next is we're talking about Facebook. Facebook Messenger for Kids is building out a digital literacy program through gaming. So this is a way for kids to learn to make decisions that lead to positive outcomes. Basically, what it's doing is helping kids start to navigate the seas of the online world. And they take a Messenger for Kids pledge to be kind, be respectful, be safe, and have fun. And I have to say, good message for everybody. Maybe everybody on social media needs to take this pledge. So this is a tool. It's starting out with some games where kids sort of work through different problems. So they use the example. One is working through a grocery store and working with negative reviews that customers may be giving, and also working at the cash out, how to be, it looks like it's kind of how to be polite, like you accumulate these positivity points. So it's really teaching kids to learn standards, codes of conduct, and hopefully lead to being better global citizens. I would say offline and online, although of course Facebook is a little more interested in the online presence. I will say these tools and games have been developed by Meta's youth advisory team that's been in place for 2017, I think, is when it was started. So these are online safety experts, child development experts, and children's media folks who are putting this together. So it's an interesting new tool to have kids in a safe place learn how to navigate on social media.
I gotta say, I'm intrigued to talk to both of you about this. How do you feel about this, Mike?
Okay, so I think it's a nice idea. I think there's not enough traction for Messenger for kids to overcome some of the other tools that are out there. So
Okay.
nice idea. Some good things behind it. Not enough traction out there to really make a big dent.
Okay. Yeah. Good points. I think I like the effort.
Yeah.
On this. It does make me wonder. I mean, like, we need, like, and I think NLTMW kind of mentions this in the comments, you know, like Facebook doesn't, though they have a bad reputation with many businesses. Like, I mean, it comes back to, like, you know, it's like, oh, do you want Facebook raising your kids, I guess, in a way? Like, that's kind of where I think I stand with this. I think it's a good concept, but it's, you know, it's also going to be like, you know, implementation and whatnot. And I also wonder, like, are kids going to think it's too, like, hokey, I guess? Like,
well, it's going to be age appropriate, right?
Right.
They have child development specialists who are creating the games so that, you know, if you are 13, you're going to be using something that's different than if you're 16.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
will they? I mean, the only method I see would have to be some kind of partnership with schools, you know, so that schools begin using this. I just don't see there being a self-adoption or a parental adoption. And I think, you know, our commenter here that talks about Facebook with business maybe having I think Facebook with kids doesn't necessarily have a good reputation as well.
Yeah,
so
right.
So you've got distance to go.
I see it as a good tool. I see it as a good tool for parents. I don't see it as an educational tool. I just see my friends who they started Instagram accounts for their pets. And this was how they taught their children how to use social media in a good way. Like, let's take a picture of we took a picture of the pet. Is this something that we think that others should see? And how do we frame it? And really use the tools in an appropriate way. That's a heavy lift for a parent, right? There's a lot of parents who don't have that kind of time, and they don't have the digital literacy either. So I see this as a tool for families to really use together so that they can learn, and in the parents' case, maybe relearn. It doesn't have to be a parent too, you know, it could be the cool aunt. Right. I'm the cool auntie, right? And I can work through this. I sit down with the cool teen in my life, and she shows me where the effect is that I'm looking for on Instagram stories, right? Yeah. And we talk a little bit about what's working and what's not working on Instagram. because she has a little small business that she's running. And it's a great conversation piece and a way to make connections. So I see it as a good tool for families, not for the education sector as a whole.
Good points. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, again, something to think about. I mean, it's good that Facebook is, and I guess we could say Facebook in this case, right? It's good that they're rolling this out and they're trying to make it age appropriate. I will say I'm looking at like some of these screenshots and I have to say they look very much like the Apple App Store. So like, just, and again, I think that's, just making sure that it kind of resonates with the audience. But I like the idea of that. I mean, again, it's, the first episode of Be Kind is going to roll out today, they said, to all countries where Messenger Kids is available. So if your country has Messenger Kids available, again, I think that's a separate app, right? So if they have Messenger Kids available, you should be able to see the first episode of that and kind of go through it, just test it out, see if you like it. And just remember, it's going to get better. That's the key thing. So it's not like, oh, it's going to be, oh, you try it once, you're like, I'm not sold on it. Just remember, it's going to get better. So
it's lots of bright colors, and it is visually, there is a lot of white space to give that visual rest so that you can click into that decision-making process too. So it's and when I looked through the screenshots, it seemed very intentional to me, having worked in the education space before, that it's not too overstimulating and helps kids focus. So really do like that.
Okay. So Sarah, we got a couple more news topics, right? And then we want to talk to Mike, right? So
a couple
what's
more
next?
news topics. So Instagram, and talking about being better at social media and being kinder, Instagram is taking more action against bullying and hate speech on their platform. So they have actually announced that they are going to downrank posts and stories. So feed posts and stories that are bullying and hate speech. And let's remember, it's been at least 4 or 5 years that Instagram's algorithm and machine learning has been able to identify negative framed comments. I don't know if any of you had seen it, but I used to see it if something was written negatively or too sarcastically, you would get this prompt pop up that would say, "Are you sure you want to post that?" So all of these years of machine learning, they are now putting into this so that anything that's potentially upsetting to you in your feed will be downranked. So that upsetting factor, that upsetting signal is based on your interaction with similar content and that source of information, so that account that's posting over time. So right now it's very individual, user-based. You will eventually see those posts if you keep going and keep going, but let's be honest, who really does keep going on Instagram? So again, this is only posts. It's not going to downrank accounts. They've been very clear about that, so that none of these rumors of shadow banning or all of these things about people getting hidden. Your post will be seen eventually, but if it's going to be considered upsetting to a particular user, it won't be seen.
I gotta say, I'm intrigued to get Mike's take on this. What do you think, Mike? I have some thoughts on this, but what do you think about the fact that Instagram's going to kind of take over, removing posts that are, like just bad for a user? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's it's always a fine line, but there's definitely some need for that. I think that what we've determined kind of, there's peripheral edges, you want open communication, and yet then there's those peripheral edges where that kind of goes overboard, where a majority have said, that is outside of a moral helpful norm, and that's dangerous. And so, being able to address those, I think is important. I mean, it just reminds me, I've had this conversation in the back of my mind going about the Spotify and what's kind of happening there about, is Spotify doing enough? I mean, I don't know if this is not Spotify, but it makes me think of that, because it's all about what are you doing with this user generated content on your platform? So it is difficult. There's a question that comes up: who decides what is bad? is, kind of one of those comments that came up, and that's true. So I mean, I think it has to be pretty blatant, but and that the majority can agree upon that is not a positive thing.
Mhm. And it is going to be based on user behavior too, right? So my algorithm, very different than your algorithm.
Okay.
I see it at being a woman on the internet. I have to say, you use the wrong hashtag, and the bots that come after your posts are just appalling. And I don't really need the "Hey baby" direct messages or the "Hey, post your thing." If I'm posting a picture on Instagram with my face on it and use something like women in business or women supporting women, I instantly get 3 or 4 comments saying, "Hey, post on our platform, which is not appropriate. So I am very much looking forward to something that will sweep more of this away from my experience on Instagram.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, I like the idea that, and there was a good comment actually. Let me see if I can find it from NLTMW said, we were talking about paid memberships earlier. He said, hey, that would help reduce trolls and bullying, et cetera. And it, that actually fits very nicely with this, in the sense that if the platform could, if they could do a better job, I think at just kind of weeding out some of that content, because I mean, again, sometimes people, they get up there in the algorithm, and all of a sudden, like, they then do their job, what they need. And so I think that if they could, if Instagram, like the fact that Instagram's trying to downrank stuff, I think that it makes a lot of sense for them to try to do that, to help clean up somebody's feed and whatnot. But at the same time, it goes back to the same point. And that's the same point that everyone I think has always had. Who decides, and NLTMW said this, who decides what's bad? So
right. And right now it's the math.
Yeah.
Right now it's math and all of the hundreds of thousands of signals that go into determining what shows up on your feed. So
yeah,
absolutely. So, okay, Sarah, do we have any other topics for the week, or we want to talk to Mike?
We have one last topic. I want to just get it out there and be able to say fungible on the internet in a live stream, right? So
you
there's
need to, because it's hot.
I know, it's one of my favorite words. It's like spongiform encephalopathy. I like saying fungible too. So NFTs are in the news. We will tweet this out and put it in the blog post that follows the show. But Twitter is talking more and more about displaying NFTs within Twitter Blue. So that you can and it will actually give a link to the ownership and the creator of the NFTs on OpenSea. So if you aren't into NFTs, if you don't know what it is, there are YouTube comedians that are doing hilarious things about what NFTs are, but Twitter is sort of moving toward this more ownership of NFTs in your profile picture. Other news, the Financial Times in the UK is reporting that Facebook and Instagram is also jumping into this and exploring how they can create a marketplace for NFTs. Reddit is also in the space with NFTs for profiles. And just like 48 hours ago, YouTube has announced their 2022 goals, and in it is an NFT and their approach to Web3 as part of the whole YouTube ecosystem expansion. So NFTs are very much in the news. Please read the blog post or see our tweets about it so you can link out to the articles that I just sort of ran through very quickly.
Yeah, so most platforms are moving to this, or at least moving to offering it. Mike, what do you think real quick on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the year of the NFT. I think this is the year that those early adopters were in it last year, and now it's transitioning so that your mid-range folks, not the late adopters, but the mid-range are going to be forced to figure out what an NFT is, non-fungible token, and what it's used for. I mean, I was on Twitter earlier this week, and it said, "Hey, do you want to make your profile, an NFT?" And I was like, "What? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can mint my profile picture or what?" And then
Yeah.
then I got in there and it was like, "Oh, sign up for Twitter Blue." I was like, "Wait, oh, yeah, oh, okay." So they're experimenting. It's going to come. It's interesting. I mean, people out there listening, you got to start learning about Web3, and that's where the blockchain and NFTs come into play. So this year you're going to see a lot of stuff rolling out. That is it going to work this way, or can this work, or can this work? So this is one of those
Mhm.
things. But I think it's an interesting concept to have an NFT with your profile picture. That it's going to make more sense in the months ahead.
Cool.
Mhm.
Very cool. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
it is Q&A time, isn't it,
It
Sarah?
is Q&A time. It is Q&A time. And we mentioned earlier in the show, we started talking about the private side of social media through Twitter flocks, Facebook groups, all of these other things, messaging. So there really is a movement toward this. And we want to talk to Mike about this private side um, and ask you, Mike, why is social media moving toward this more private mode, smaller groups, in your mind as a
Yeah,
business strategist? Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think probably one of the biggest reasons is just because of uh, backlash against what's happened in the public forums. I mean, people are tired of saying something and then just having this barrage of people from anywhere and everywhere kind of come and crap on the party, and so to speak. And so I think that there's there's a desire to uh, communicate without that wide open and troll concept happening. And I think you mentioned it, Sarah, as well, with your Instagram, and you want to get away from the bots. So that's, I mean, we're getting away from the trolls, the bots, the radical extremists that just want to jump on the bandwagon. And so the more private, my partner there at Magnet Marketers, Jessica Phillips, she calls it dark social. So it's social that is not public. That's it's not dark in a bad way. It's just it's not public. But you can have large groups. Flock is a perfect example of that, where you can get 150 people in there. Um, but you're screening. Okay, so it's that way you're hopefully getting rid of those peripheral edges that are not adding any value and that are distracting the whole thing. And that's been one of the downfalls of Facebook. um y- of why people are kind of more privatizing their feed. They're just tired of the onslaught. So from a business perspective, I think it's of businesses are seeing it a value as well, being able to offer a little bit more to a more intimate audience. I mean, you want to reach the masses, but then once someone has purchased from you once, or part of your community, you want to communicate with them differently. You want to continue to add value to them. You want to offer ways for them to go deeper with you. To know, to like, to trust, and to refer you. And so that's where that community can happen. So I think definitely there's been a reaction to some of the public negativity, and that's why social media is moving more towards private. So I'll start there. Welcome you guys
Mhm.
to get some inputs as well.
Sure. Sure. I have to say, um, I like I said, I started segmenting my Facebook friends list from the moment I started
A
my
while ago.
Facebook account.
Okay.
Yeah, because I segment lists. That's part of what I do. I work in fundraising and PR and marketing, and you segment your lists. So that's the best practice. So my close friends, I can count on both hands how many people are in my very closest circle within my Facebook. Yeah, exactly. Within my
Luckily.
Facebook group. Yeah. But I have to say, a lot of them have stopped using Facebook. And we have moved into private text messaging threads. We've moved into shared photo albums. There's a friend of mine and we just share pictures back and forth, or I have a family shared album so that they see that, so they don't have to go onto these social media platforms, or maybe they're not there, right? We have some friends who aren't in that private text thread. They aren't on Instagram, so they aren't seeing some of the goofy things that we're posting on Instagram. I definitely agree with you that there's been too much. It's just been too much, and people need that quieter community and a way to really connect. And I hate to use the word authentically, but to really be able to be part of a smaller group and have more genuine and deeper connections with people.
Yes. And mental health, right? I mean, we've seen that kind of pop up, and so kind of better for your mental health to not to eliminate some of that peripheral stuff that just was bad noise for you.
Right. And I think in some respects, we as humans aren't built to be connected to everybody in the world.
There you go.
Be connected with billions and billions of people through one platform. So this really does help create these personalized spaces for everybody. So
yeah, it's good. I gotta say, I mean, it's gonna be I 100% agree with you all in the fact that, like, it, in a way, it's almost like, it's actually almost like a paywall. Like, it keeps people off social because they don't want that, they don't want to be attacked for just posting something. Like, they can't share, any of their views because there's always going to be a troll or somebody, that's going to come on and kind of attack that. And so I like the idea of, in a way, if you also think about, like, your parents or people like that aren't comfortable in social, a lot of them think that they can just click whatever somebody posts, right? And they don't know where that's taking them, what kind of link that is, and so forth. And so I do like the idea of at least making it more private, because then that way it helps reduce some of that barrier that does exist.
Right.
One less thing to have to think about. So awesome. So that's a great feedback, Mike. So in terms of, like, we had another question for him, right? Sarah?
We do. And that is, and Mike, you did already touch on it, but let's get a little more specific about how businesses can use these smaller sections, either user groups or customer groups. How can, in a little more concrete way, can businesses use these smaller, let's say, spaces or communities within social media?
Yeah. So I think there, a couple different ideas, different examples. And that is, for one, maybe you're getting ready to host a event, maybe an in-person event. So there can be a smaller private group around that event just for attendees. So things that are building the community, building momentum, building connections ahead of an event and during and after. So that's one use of a smaller social group just for that segment that's going to be attending. I think that there can be definitely a service or support element to it. So you can break that down for this. Say you offer 10 services, 10 products, okay, but someone has one of those and they want to drill down deeper within that. So offering something specific on that one product or service and having a smaller micro group for that can help those who are interested just in that interact around that. Okay. And I think then from another standpoint, maybe again, there's, you want to build that know, like, trust relationship with folks. And so you can offer maybe ahead of time a group where they can get some information from you, and that helps them get to experience you and build a know, like, trust with you so that they want to do that. That's before they agree to work with you. But because of that intimate experience in this micro group, niche group, that they have felt more comfortable taking the next step and saying, that's the kind of organization, that's the kind of person that I'm looking for. I want to connect with them. So I think that those are uses, in the event realm, in the support realm, in the kind of pre-sales realm, and then I think there's even the post-sale realm that's not support, but it's in the ongoing user experience, user interface, with your product, or with your service that's ongoing, that would help them stay connected to you and stay in touch with your service, what you're offering, by engaging with them. So I'm in a smaller community that where we kind of it helps us take advantage of the fullness of what we purchased, and it keeps us engaged with that community ongoing. And the more that we have interconnections within that community, the more we're tied in to stay keeping going with that product service down the line.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. And this is one respect. I have a background in the nonprofit world,
Okay.
and how we connect with people, with donors or supporters or advocates, right?
Yeah.
This is a great way for businesses to take a page from the nonprofit world, and how we, people connect with the nonprofits because they believe in what that organization is doing. And so getting your evangelists, your brand evangelists, or your product users to believe in that too, and want to build a community around it, I think is important.
I gotta say, I like the idea also, Mike, of we talked about like I can see using Twitter Flocks for customer support. Like you could have it where like it's if you need to get a message out to your channel, to your followers, for example, a lot of times people are like, oh well, they tell, like, for example, we say at the end of the show we always tell people where they can get in touch with us, and it's not, I mean, yeah, we have the same handle maybe across all our social media platforms, but you need to make sure you're very deliberate about where you tell people to connect with you. Because if you tell them, hey, connect with me on all my social media platforms, they're going to message you everywhere. And then you have to then keep up with all that.
Mhm.
So I could totally see Flocks being used potentially for something like that as well, to be able to get out important messages as well. Just to almost like VIP support for your social
There you
media,
go.
for your
Mhm.
business.
Yep.
Right. And training those customers, that's where you go. You don't go
Yep.
to Facebook Messenger, you don't go here, you don't go there. If you want our people, this is how you do it.
Actually, the more I think about it, I like that idea of offering like a VIP support system,
Yeah. No,
because
I
it's
think
only
VIP is
150 people, and you can
Yes.
charge somebody for that, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
say, hey, you know what? You give me $100 a year, that'll give you access to our VIP support, and there's only 150 slots.
Right. Or
So
if you're
Yes.
already paying, if you're at the enterprise level of our product, you automatically get this with that subscription. So
Yeah,
yeah.
very
absolutely.
cool.
So it's that something special, something
Mhm.
unique, narrowed down.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
awesome.
So
Well, I gotta say, this
okay.
is I do want to quickly highlight what our tool of the week was.
Yep.
Um,
Our tool of the week is
okay,
Asana. Yeah, we'll just do a quick rundown. So we talked about Meta Workplace. Asana actually has a lot more tools when we talk about productivity, file sharing, all the different pieces. If you haven't checked it, I've actually built a workplace within Asana. I'm a little surprised. I thought that Asana had a CRM to it, but it looks like it doesn't, which
no,
is
I think it needs
probably
to hook
what.
into one.
Yeah, I think it has to hook into one, but it's great for putting together timelines and milestones and deadlines and reports and Gantt charts. If you know what a Gantt chart is and you've ever had to build one, you know how difficult it is. So this has a lot of that automation put into it, and a very clean, beautiful workspace. I really like the Asana interface, I have to say, much more than Teams. And much more than Jira. I've worked in Jira too, which can just be incredibly incredibly complicated as far as task management goes. But Asana is much more streamlined, and it can connect to things like Harvest, so you can do time tracking and sheets and timesheets and invoices and things like that. So there's a lot. There's a lot to Asana. I actually highly recommend you checking it out if you're looking for something in the new year to organize your projects and your work. Mike, are you an Asana user?
Daily.
Yeah.
Daily. Yeah, I'm a big Asana fan, and we use it for all kinds of project management, keeping the remote team on the same page, being able to have a project and assign tasks and switch that back and forth, leave notes, add files, all that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely big fan.
Yeah, and here's the thing: it gets rid of the need to have paper to always write stuff down. You can just put everything in there. You can set up projects. You can make it simple. You can make it complex. It's
Yeah.
free all the way up to premium access starts at $11 per user per month, billed annually. But it gives you, at that point, there's like reporting and Teams features and things like that. But it's a very powerful tool to use. So awesome. Well, I'm glad we could cover that. And again, it helps you basically get everything out of your brain so that you can focus on everything else that you need to focus on. So awesome. Well, this has been a fantastic show. Just a couple of quick questions. So Sarah, where can people get in touch with you?
People can find me across social media at Sarah Monroe VT. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, please drop me a message and let me know that you saw me on Social Chatter.
Awesome. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, well, you can always find me at MikeGingerich.com. That's my business blog. And also my Twitter is Mike_Gingerich. That's another good way to reach me.
Fantastic. And I'm Christian Karasevich. I'm at Social Chefs on all of the social media properties. Just send me a message and just let me know, if you want to chat and whatnot, or need help with social media. So with that, I just have a couple quick announcements. We have the blog post recap going out over the weekend, socialchefs.com/SC328. And then we're going to be back, and I can't believe it. It's going to be February, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think we're going to have, I think I got this right, Sarah, right? We got, I think James Tucker's going to come and join us.
Yep.
Yeah. So James Tucker is going to join us. And I think that's at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. But with that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in for episode 328, where we've talked about Twitter Flock with Mike Gingerich. So with that, hope everybody has a great rest of the great weekend, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.